I am now, thank you. So this is the special meeting of the Community Connectivity Grant Committee, Tuesday, August 8th, August 10th, 2021, 4 p.m. And as you know, the date on the agenda was corrected by our clerk. Thank Vicki. This is a virtual meeting. It's being recorded by WebEx. And as far as the welcome goes, those in attendance besides myself, Mary Jo Nozel, Tim Griswold, First Selectman, Kurt Procherena, BSC Group, and then committee members Jim Lampos and Bonnie Ream-Snyder. We are waiting on Frank Pappalardo and Eric Olson, but we have a quorum, so we will get underway. I'm just going to check to see if I have any messages from them saying. Nope. Okay. So the next thing on our agenda is public comment. I don't see anybody on the WebEx list, but I'll just put a shout out if there's anybody there that I can't see from the public that would like to make a comment. The floor is yours. Okay, no public comment. Next, we have the project update and plan cost estimates, which I hoped to have some more updates from our contractor today. I'm going to ask Kurt if he's had any feedback from Dan Laverio or Dan Lebeck of Laverio since we spoke earlier today.
Yep, I was able to reach Dan today. So just a quick update of the discussions I had with him, and I'm happy to answer questions or get into detail, but I'll start with a quick overview and then we can always circle back as needed. I'll be sending him change order 1 for the new curbing at Cross Lane and Shore Road. So made him aware of that. That has been formally approved by DOT. Told him to continue to stand by on the potentially two additional decorative signposts. Once a decision was made, I told him we would advise on whether it was going to be 1 or 2. Told him that we had received his cost for the additional sidewalk ramp across from the church. We discussed the schedule for implementation of the DOT requested fixes. He is requesting that he do that work concurrent with the bituminous apron corrections on Hartford Avenue and the transit hub work. And we can talk about that as needed. We talked about the fence at the Hurricanes. As you know, that's something that we've been anxiously awaiting for quite some time. And the good news is he indicated the fence is in stock at their warehouse now, finally. So would like some direction from the committee on when the installation of that should move forward. Could be anytime. And then last but not least, 2 more items, I'm sorry. We talked about the transit hub breakdown. So I have an update on what I've requested of him there. And then we talked about payment application 2, that it's essentially on hold because in payment application 2, it indicates that all the work on Shore Road is completed at 100%. And I said, with the DOT comments and their desire to have some areas fixed, we can't call it 100%. So he's going to revise application 2 accordingly and resend it. So he understood. He was fine with that. So that was my discussion with him. We can go into any detail as appropriate during the meeting.
Okay. Thank you. So, hi, Frank. I know, Frank, you just joined us. Just to give you just a
The link
quick
on the town
update, Frank.
calendar, by the way. The link on the town calendar
I'm-
doesn't work.
Were you able to use, that's a problem. Were you able to use the one on the agenda?
I get, that's the one I used was the one that got forwarded to my email.
Okay, as long as as the one on the agenda is working, we're
I didn't
probably
check
okay.
that one, but I do know the one on the town that doesn't work.
Okay, that's the one I used, is the one on the agenda, so. But I will, I guess that goes to Michelle in Tim's office. I'll let her know. Maybe there was a problem linking it. And maybe that's where Eric's having a delay. Okay, so basically, Frank, Kurt gave us an update that he had a chat with Dan Levesque today, our contracting group, and kind of brought us up to speed on the change order for the curbing at Shore and Cross that's been approved by DOT and was signed by Tim. And then the two other change orders that are pending that we can talk about, as well as Dan's request to do all the additional work, the rework at the same time as he comes back to town for the transit hub. We'll discuss that. And the fence at the Hurt Hands is now in their warehouse. He also has a breakdown that he wants to talk about on the transit hub costs. Payment number 2 is on hold because it was inappropriately invoiced that everything was done on Shore Road, and it is not. Still don't see Eric. Okay. So the other question, I guess the first, we should just take them in order. Change order number 2 is the signposts that we desire to have at the corners of Shore Road and Hartford Avenue on the east and west side of the street. And as you know, at our last meeting, we talked about the fact that the west side of the street where the posts may go might conflict with the work that we did at the easement. It may look a little crowded, that corner. And also the cost, which was over $6,000, seemed really exorbitant. So I think the issue facing this committee today is, are we comfortable with one decorative signpost for both the street sign and the stop sign that would be on the east side of the street?
I'm certainly comfortable with that.
Thank you,
I
Frank.
mean, to save aggravation with the easements and crowdiness and everything else, I think that more than adequate.
Does anyone else have
I
any
would
thoughts
agree.
on that? Okay,
I would agree.
thank you. How about you, Jim?
Yep.
Okay, I agree too. Kurt, do we have a cost estimate for one sign versus the two? Is it a straight 50-50 split or not?
That's a great question. We don't have a split cost, but now that it looks like that's the way to go, and I think that makes sense. It is pretty tight on that other side with the right-of-way issues and the Easy Mart sign. I will email him to have him revise the cost. And that should be very easy for him because clearly he got a quote from the vendor and he just kind of combined it. So he should be able to get us that cost very quickly.
Okay, that would be good. So
Is
I
he
guess we'll.
waiting? Oh, pardon me. Is he
Ahead,
waiting to do the sign at Bocce and Hartford Avenue? So, and the one at North on Hartford and Shore at the same time? Because the one at Bocce at Hartford Avenue was part of the base quote. That still hasn't been done yet either.
Yes, he did indicate that he would like to do them at the same time.
Okay, so I'll just make a motion that the CCGC moves to approve one decorative signpost for change order number 2 at the corner of Shore Road and Hartford Avenue.
On the east side.
The east side.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Yes, I just want to make sure we're crystal clear on what this post actually includes. It includes the post which the stop sign will reside in, and
Mhm.
also the street sign itself for Hartford Avenue and Shore Road, and that will be similar to the ones on Lower Hartford Avenue. Am I correct in that?
That is correct. Yep. I also noticed that the current post has mounted on the opposite side a sign, I think that talks about the limitation of the size of buses and such.
Yes.
So I envision we would want that replaced also onto this post.
That actually should go on a separate post on the right-hand side of the street, you know, at like, under,
On the west.
on the west side of the street.
Do you feel that's something that you'd like to have the contractor do, or would you prefer that that sign be turned over to the town and then your public works department would install that?
Why don't we
Looks
install it?
like the
and say-
public works.
I agree. Public Works to do that. I'd also like to make an amendment to the motion, Mary Jo, that the cost not to exceed, we put a number down there. They wanted $6,200 for both both posts, so.
Okay, I
not to
think,
exceed.
okay, I think I'll retract my motion and we'll restate it. Is that,
Just one thing, with two signs on one post, it will be greater than the half the cost, probably.
So the signs are just, no, you think that, Kurt? I mean, it's just, we're not buying new signs. We're putting the same sign up, the same stop sign.
I just don't know. It'll be close. It'll be very close. And the reason I say it's hard to tell is if you have a single stop sign, it's a shorter post. The street sign type post is taller, but in our case, we're combining it. So it's a taller post than a regular stop sign post, but we're mounting the stop sign to it. So I've just been using a 50-50, but who knows? It could be a 60-40. We really won't know. till
I
we
would
get the
do
price.
3,500 or 4,000.
I'd say not to exceed
I mean,
35. I think 3,500 is more than enough on that.
Yeah, plenty. Hmm.
okay, I've retracted my motion and I'm now going to make a new motion. Make a motion that the CCGC approves a decorative signpost on the east side corner of Hartford Avenue, Shore Road. That includes a stop sign, the street sign for Hartford Avenue and Shore Road, and a cost not to exceed $3,500.
And I'll second that.
I think, was that, I don't know who said it, got it first.
Doesn't matter. Both of us
Okay.
second it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. Thank you. So that's that. That takes care of change order number 1, change order number 2. The ramp at church, across from the church for change order number 3. Kurt, we had some discussion at our last meeting, what the cost was, because it appeared that Dan put it in the overall bid for the, or not bid, estimate for the transit hub. So is your understanding that that 3,500 is for that ramp that we're
Yeah,
talking about?
the 3,500 is kind of a standalone, independent sort of activity, if you will.
Okay,
Theoretically, if it's part of the transit hub work, you know, it could end up being 3,300 because he's got some economy of scale, but he priced it out as an independent activity.
okay, all right.
My recommendation would be to keep it conservative, that we just use that as the number until other data came in that would indicate otherwise.
Okay.
Sir, could you describe what this ramp is? Is it your typical dip with the dimples on it, or what's the
Yes,
story?
yep, it's exactly that. It looks very much like the ramp across from the Easy Mart.
And is it is it like 4 feet wide or something? It just seems that 3,500 is a pretty big price for something like that. You think that's a fair price?
You know, it's hard to say with concrete prices spiking and minimum delivery charges. There's all kinds of crazy things going on as far as what materials cost. I wouldn't say it's out of the range of, you know, what might be expected. It is a little bit high, but it is within the high-low range, I guess.
How did we miss this to begin with?
Because
I'm just like, I'm thinking to myself, how did we miss this?
yeah, it was something that we knew had to go in, but there was, because of the transit hub, there was a question on what type of ramp would be required, because if there's no sidewalk there, it's a different ramp. And when I say no sidewalk, I mean the T that goes into that ramp. So near the end of the design, we kind of weren't sure how to address it because we didn't want an incorrect ramp getting put in. So in the end, we just said, let's just go with a straight sidewalk. And we were hoping that the transit hub would sort of overlap and, you know, we could sort of catch it before the sidewalk actually went in. Didn't work out that way, unfortunately. So, you know, now it's sort of it's an add-on. It would have been part of the project anyway, but the timing didn't work out in our favor.
And it would have added a little bit of cost to the project.
Oh, definitely, because you would have needed it regardless.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
It's
So
not like it's a
We,
new
we may,
ramp.
we may be paying a bit of a premium because it's change order.
That's correct. Yep.
So we can make a motion, Mary Jo, to accept that change order with a cost of not to exceed $3,500.
You sure can.
All right, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Can
I'll
I have a
second it.
Thank you, Bonnie. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. On not related to the change order, but related to the topic. I guess all of these are related to the topic. Dan had requested that all the work be done at the same time. So basically he would regroup and come back when he gets work to be done, when it gets approval to do the transit hub, as opposed to what we were planning, which was right after Labor Day. So this could put us in October. If we agree to that, maybe that's the first discussion. How does everyone feel about allowing Martin Laverio to return to do all the work in October after we get approvals from like the zoning commission and planning for the transit hub?
I don't think I wouldn't have a problem with that. I think it makes sense. If they're gonna come back to do work, let them do it all at once, rather than a couple of times and, you know, causing whatever. It's a slower time of the year anyway, once we get into September, October. I just hope it can be done before next spring. But I
And
guess
he
some of that may
confirmed in my
depend on
discussion
zoning.
today that he could.
My two concerns are, number one, if we need to get grass growing up there and he's there at the end of October, we're not gonna have grass growing. And it's gonna be a mud hole until the spring. So that's one concern I have. And the other concern is that I want Teddy's done. I want Teddy's done last month. He still hasn't corrected the problem there. That's a business. It's an ongoing business. He's one of our strongest supporters. And he still hasn't corrected the problem at Teddy's Pizza. And I don't think we should wait at all on that. We should hold his feet to the fire to get that corrected ASAP.
Well, I wasn't talking about Teddy's. I was going to ask
Oh.
about Teddy's later, but I
That's-
wasn't referring to that.
Yeah, but that's part of the work.
Can we talk to him about Teddy's? Just finishing that?
I'm happy to discuss anything that the committee would like. Absolutely. I'm at your disposal.
I think that should be a conversation because we're not getting very good press about that on things like Facebook, you know. And I don't know exactly what the problem was there, but as far as grass growing, you know, I think we're gonna have the same problem with the transit hub. So,
I'm
You know.
I'm okay with waiting until he can mobilize to do the majority of the work there. I mean, I'm okay with that. If it's October, it's October. But I think Teddy's needs to be done, and it should have been done last month, and we're still waiting on that. And I'm sorry, I'm just, it was a screw up, and it needs to be fixed.
that's fine. I don't disagree with you either. I think it should be addressed.
I could request that he mobilize essentially without delay to do Teddy's. And now that we have approval from DOT and the committee and the town for the add curbing at Cross Lane, it's the same crew, it's the same equipment. I could tell him, we want you to get that curbing work done immediately.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, this has got to be done, before Labor Day. I mean, before that, we only have 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks left. It's got to be done before Labor Day.
I think that makes sense to ask him. I don't have any problem with that.
Okay, I'll email him.
Thank you. But along the same lines, if we do approve him putting everything else off until October, and honestly, I agree with Bonnie in that regard. Do we need, and I brought this up at a previous meeting, do we need to put up some kind of warning at the crosswalk of the church? So people know that there isn't a ramp at that end. I know we are hoping to have it done sooner than later. So this would be, putting it off another maybe 4 to 6 weeks.
I don't think it would hurt to put it there, to put a sign.
Yeah.
Well, what's an appropriate sign from a legal liability standpoint?
I could inquire with DOT District 2 to see what they would accept. It is their crosswalk.
Yeah.
I recall at one point they had mentioned that this is going back a little ways, but if that crosswalk was to be removed, that they would remove it because I believe they installed it. So, they own it, they operate it. Why don't I find out what would be acceptable to them in these kind of cases?
I just want to make sure we don't exacerbate the problem. So we need to put up the proper wording and proper signage there. And I agree, it's a great idea to put that up, Bonnie.
Well, Kurt, just a crazy idea. If that sidewalk is pre-existing under DOT's management, would they have been responsible to put the ramp in?
Yes.
Could we invite them to do that?
Well, the crosswalk, theoretically, the crosswalk was not compliant under the previous conditions because there wasn't a landing or anything on the other side, which is kind of interesting in and of itself. But now that we've put the sidewalk in, you know, the solution is to put the ramp in. We could certainly ask. I suspect they will say, well, just do it as part of your,
Well, it's DOT money anyway.
yeah, it's kind of,
It's DOT money anyway, so essentially they're just letting us do the planning. Because this will be able to be an expense of the grant.
oh, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, so I wouldn't
Makes
split
sense.
hairs with them.
No.
Jim, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I just noticed we had call-in user too, and I just wondered who that was. That was you. Okay,
WebEx is just not, it keeps knocking my phone completely offline. So
okay.
I think I have to reload it or something because it only happens with WebEx.
I had to reload it this time too.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
have
so
we have a new subscription or something. I had to also.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. Okay, so thank you, Kurt. That sounds like a good plan to reach out to DOT to District 2 to find out what they would recommend for signage at that location. And given, you know, given some of the events this summer, I think it makes sense to have something there to notify the public that there's no place to land. Thank you. Fence at Hurricanes, that's great news. So I guess that was the other question you had for us, Kurt. If we're going to ask for Lavario to mobilize to come down to do Teddy's and the curbing, could he put in the fence then too?
Yeah, we actually had that discussion today. You know, I said, let me ask the committee when they would like the fence installed. I said, I'm just not sure. You know, it may be that because we're at the height of the season now, they may say, well, at this point, we'll wait or whatever. I said, I will find out and I'll advise. So he has like a separate crew that would do that. And it's a
Oh.
pretty small operation. It's not like he's going to have, you know, machinery on the street or something. And we could even tell him, look, you can't do it on a weekend. It has to be during the week. You know, maybe we say it has to be Monday through Thursday or something. But we can kind of set those standards for him if we wanted him to get out there without delay for the fence.
Well, it seems to me that he should,
Without delay at the earliest possible time.
yeah, I mean, that's been one patient homeowner, so.
And then it's an aesthetic thing too. I mean, the more we can complete this project before the end of the
Yeah,
summer season, the better off we are.
Yep.
yeah,
Okay, I'll convey that to him also.
thank you. All right, transit hub breakdown. So we're kind of getting into more of the nitty gritty. At our last meeting, actually our last two meetings, we agreed to accept the base price of the hub. But there's a question as to exactly what does that base hub, the 42,000 and change, I'm just looking for it.
41,950.
Thank you. What exactly that encompasses, Kurt?
Yep. And from the information that we received, that's what I call the core project.
Mhm.
And by the way, I know that we need some extra cost detail from him, and I can kind of fill you in on what we talked about. what I'd like to get from him also is a little more definitive detail on that 41,950 number. But it's my understanding that that's basically your core project. So that would be the gravel roadway, the new sidewalk, the shelter pad, the concrete aprons at the end of the roadway at the intersecting roads, the grass and seeding and regrading. And I think that was it, because then everything else, the landscaping, which would be the buffering at the two houses and the landscaping around the shelter, were in his other prices.
Mhm.
I think that was the 36,200.
Mhm.
And then the, what we call amenities, i.e. benches, trash cans, bike racks, were all in his other cost of 26,700.
Kurt,
Yeah,
did
like I said,
the,
we'll
did
get
the
the
base,
confirmation on that.
did the base quote include the pads for the benches? If he's pouring concrete, does it include the pads for the benches?
I would have to check on that, and I will get a confirmation to a higher level of detail than what we have.
Kurt, another question. The road would be paved where the bus stops, is that right? With
Yeah, that is
bitumen?
correct. Yep.
Okay,
So there'll be bituminous aprons. And then there'll be a section of bituminous where the bus shelter is, where the bus stops.
We're proposing the aprons, I think, to be concrete, but I could request an alternate for those to be bituminous. Might reduce some of your costs.
Yeah,
And now, frankly, now's the time to do that. For him, that's easy. He just bases it on the area of the aprons. So that could be like an alternate that we put in there.
Yeah.
And yeah, where the bus would physically stop, we would size that again to control cost. And by the way, to minimize stormwater issues, because your site right now is 100% pervious. So we want to really avoid any stormwater issues by minimizing the impervious area. So that little apron would be just in front of the bus shelter, just enough for the bus to stop on.
yeah, okay.
would that be, would we need a wheelchair to be able to get around to the door and so forth, or no?
Well, the bus would only pull up, well, yes, the answer is yes, but the bus would only pull up on one side. It would be, they would always come in, so the loading door is at the shelter.
Right. Do you think the aprons to the streets should be concrete for longevity versus bituminous?
That's what we were thinking, because we were envisioning the same aprons that were used on like Harford Avenue and Shore Road. Clearly, concrete is much more durable, particularly when you're abutting gravel. When you have a bituminous apron, when you abut gravel, you do get some edge deterioration. And it just doesn't last as long. And in a case like this where it has to get boxed out and a base has to get put in anyway, your incremental cost difference is basically just the material, because they're fairly small. So the value over the life cycle of putting in concrete is much higher than the bituminous, because it's going to last you easily 20, 25 years. Whereas, the bituminous is just going to age and it will start to dry out and crack.
Particularly with bus.
Yeah, it just won't last as long.
Well, it sounds like it makes sense to do the concrete aprons, definitely.
Hey, Kurt, does the inspections testing line for, I'm looking at Tim's budget that he sent us, 15,700. Is that for testing the concrete? Is that directly related to concrete, or is it something else too?
I don't have that in front of me. Hold on, let me call up.
Can we just, Jim, with all due respect, can we just finish the discussion on the hub thing and then move on to the budgets? Do you mind? And I'll try and pull the budgets up the budget up on, share the screen. Mhm. But I just want to try and finish the whole thought on the apron. Okay, I guess my comment on that is, if we can afford the aprons, the concrete aprons, that makes sense to me. Particularly in that some people might be coming in there with their bikes and stuff, and I just think it'll be a longer, better looking project to have the concrete at the edges if we can afford that. Any other discussion on the aprons? Okay. And then, Kurt, you were going to talk about specifically that your decision, your discussion with Dan on getting the specifics for not only the 41,950, but the other costs that they provided estimates for, that we had some questions on.
Right. So we had sent Dan an email after our last meeting where we had requested a breakdown. We have not received that data. So today, in trying to get the data so the committee can make some decisions, I offered to put together a specific list of the components that we're requesting pricing for, so Dan could simply fill in the cost numbers associated with that. Then I could provide that list to the committee, and you know, in our next meeting or something, we could literally just run down that list and tally up what everything costs. And once you hit your budget, there's your project. Pretty simple. So I started putting that list together today. I'll have that to him tomorrow morning. And he
Okay.
committed to being able to turn that around fairly quickly.
Okay, thanks. Because it's really hard to make, you know, go, no-go decisions without the actual cost.
Absolutely. Especially if we're trying to, we know that we're over budget right now. If you're trying to compile an actual cost, we just have no basis for the elements that you want to prioritize.
Mhm. Yeah.
Really,
Go ahead.
at this juncture, we still can't even vote on anything. We're not quite sure what the core part of the project includes. We think it includes the concrete. We think it includes seating and grading and all of that, but we're not 100% sure. Am I correct, Kurt?
That's right. I think we're close, but we're not at 100%.
Right, we're not 100% positive. We have no idea what the unit costs are for landscaping, and no idea what the unit costs are for the amenities. We're still back where we were, you know, a month ago.
Well, I know that this committee has twice approved the base cost, 41,950. So I mean, I guess basically what we're saying as a committee is we do want to get a transportation hub completed this fall at that site, correct?
Most definitely. I think we're all in agreement there.
Okay, okay. So my take on this is that we want to get the specifics so that we can cut out what the taxpayer will have to pay for out of other budgets or another grant, the amenities primarily. And the other issue we had was the landscaping seemed absurd, as well as the marine, using all the costs using for the decorative marine look seemed crazy because we had a lot of the equipment right there, the materials right there for them. So, but to my understanding, we definitely, given the discussion we've had today, which seems like the only part we're a little unsure of is the grass seeding, and everything else seems a go. So can we tell?
Can I make a suggestion?
Please.
That we establish the scope of work to include the aprons, the bituminous pad, the sidewalks, grading and seeding, the roadway, and I think that's about it for the, and this is what we're gonna pay you $42,000 for.
And the pad for the shelter.
Pad for the shelter, and maybe even the two pads for the for benches, for future benches. And this is our statement of work. You told us it was 41,500. Fine. You agree with this statement of work, we'll give you the okay to do it. Rather than wait him to come back, we'll take the initiative. We'll tell him what the statement of work is.
Okay, so it's the aprons, concrete aprons, the grading and reseeding, the road with a little bit of bituminous or concrete rather for the bus to stop at.
I don't think they said concrete for the bus, where the bus stops, right, Kurt?
Right, that's bituminous.
Okay. The pad shelter, the sidewalk, and then small pads for the benches. That's what I have. Question for that. If we're
And the
not,
side-
I'm sorry.
Did you say that you got the sidewalk too, coming from the road?
And grading and seeding of the site. Yeah.
Yep,
Yep.
aprons that are in concrete, grading and seeding. The bituminous stop, the bus, the concrete shelter pad, the sidewalk, and pads for the benches. So we're confirming that
Concrete.
scope of work. Question though, if we had concerns with the bus eroding the aprons of bituminous, are we not worried about that where it's going to stop too?
In my opinion, it will undergo a little less punishment by nature of it's just a flat surface. And essentially it's just a flat surface. So as people walk on and off to the bus, there's less, tripping hazard with the gravel and those things. I think it will be okay. We'll make it we won't make it a light duty. We'll make it like a medium duty
Okay,
pad, but it will undergo less punishment than the aprons would by virtue
Okay.
of where it's located.
Now, the fact that you have the vehicle coming in every day, will it make ruts over time? You know how bitumen, like the New Jersey Turnpike got to be, you change lanes and it's wavy where the tires of the vehicles kind of press down the bituminous. Would we be better off? What would be the upcharge for concrete, do you figure there?
I don't know, but typically when we design, a bituminous cross section like this would be designed like a roadway. So in this case, if designed and constructed properly, it should not rut over time.
Double layer, Kurt, double layer bituminous. A
Yeah,
base on
yeah.
top.
But the real strength comes from the stone underneath, and,
Right.
and that's really where we would get all of our strength.
And buses really don't weigh that much, Tim. Not
Yeah,
like the
that's
turnpike.
that's a great point, Frank. We're actually talking about the smaller bus units. And that's a good clarification. We're not designing this to accommodate any kind of a coach bus. It doesn't mean that a coach bus couldn't pull in there, but the pad will be sized to accommodate one of their smaller, like 15 passenger, whatever it is, but the smaller buses.
I'll clarify with Comerford to see what the future looks like, if they're going to migrate to anything, but they are small now, so.
Well, even the one that services the bus district that services the East Lyme, Niantic area, it's a little bit larger than the short buses that we're dealing with, but it's not as big as a big bus. So
Yeah.
I guess there's an intermediate size there too. So But
Okay,
even
remember
if they're not that heavy, you know.
Yep, and the pad is simply to have a firm, stable area where the passengers are traversing on and off. You know, if, so theoretically, if the rear wheels of a larger bus sat on the gravel, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's gonna be an engineered gravel cross-section. It will be a very stable surface.
okay, thank you.
And that's one of the reasons, by the way, sometimes people think of, well, it's just a gravel road. It's actually an engineered cross section. So it is almost akin to putting in the base for a pavement system, but we're just not installing the pavement. So in other words, we're not just laying gravel down over the dirt. We're actually digging it out, boxing it out, putting in the proper materials. So it is a firm, stable surface. So sometimes people say, why is it so expensive? It's just a gravel, because it is actually a constructed cross section.
And the base plan then is what we will be presenting to planning and zoning to get their approval with hopefully additional details for some buffer landscaping and accoutrement, basically, right?
Yeah, the core infrastructure, what I call it, is what we've kind of described. And then depending on what your available budget is, once we get the breakdown from Dan, we can start adding on these various amenities in order of your preference for what you'd like until we hit the budget. With it, you know, we'll leave a little bit of a contingency there.
Yep, no, it's good.
Okay, thank you.
So I just want to make sure I'm clear in my head. So we're in agreement that the 41.9 or whatever the number is, we're going to tell him what that scope of work includes. And if he agrees to that scope of work, then we're going to give him the go ahead for that first section of add-on.
That's my understanding of our discussion, assuming we get the okay from planning and zoning.
Okay,
That's the key. So that quote unquote go ahead really wouldn't occur until September, October.
but at least he can plan on it
That's correct.
and he can put it in his work schedule.
Yep, absolutely.
And it seems to me it will work in your discussion with Dan, fingers crossed. The fact that we're asking him to come back and complete some really important things to us. If he has the knowledge that we really do want to do this project, the base anyway, once we get approval, maybe that will be a better conversation than he knows that we're really committed to doing this. Okay. Just so while we're on the extraneous cost, the buffer trees, I did get the opportunity to talk to the neighbor in the end of July that lives across from the police station and just spoke to them about our plans. We hope to be able to, if the budget allowed, to put some evergreen type of tree in buffering their view. He was supportive. His only concern was not to have any parking there, which I assured him is not part of our plan. And I think Frank informed me that the neighbor who owns the property, the other house there, so the one, let's see, that would be west.
That's the one at Swan.
Okay, thank you. That's even easier. We're sort of neutral. So.
I think that when we get to that point and we get some costs, some unit costs, we probably should go to both of those homeowners and show them what trees, are available, what bushes are available.
Mhm.
Maybe even talk to the tree commission and see if they want to weigh in on it. And then we would have something, we would have numbers. Have numbers, we'd be able to know what we're doing,
Yeah. Okay.
Actually, Frank, you raise an interesting question, if I may. I know that when we had talked about somebody had suggested some deciduous trees in the area in the front, which I frankly love the idea. We know that we probably won't be able to afford those. We had talked about getting input from the tree commission on those. Do we think we would need input from the tree commission on the buffer plantings, or are those considered more of a smaller scale, that is sort of outside their purview?
I'd go to the tree commission. It's town property, so just as a courtesy. Yeah,
They're responsible for all trees on town property, so it's best
Right.
to go through them.
And as a courtesy, we could give them some options. And, we're looking at this kind of evergreen, this kind of evergreen, this kind of evergreen. As long as we're okay with whatever we offer them, they can pick one of the, and if they come back with something totally different, then we could look at it. But with the unit costing, it's a little bit easier to shuffle things around and add and subtract. I looked at the deciduous trees, we don't have to get, 8-inch cal trees, we can get something much smaller too, and put it in.
aren't the power lines on the north side?
Yes.
So we got to be very careful about not planting stuff that's going to grow up into the wires, because that's been a perennial problem.
We
Yeah.
can, I mean,
We had
Well,
them placed farther enough inboard. I had taken some measurements out there that where we have them shown on the preliminary design, they won't interfere with the wires even after, 25, 30 years.
Okay.
We pushed them way inboard.
my apologies, but I'm gonna have to leave in about 5 minutes, so,
Okay.
anything we need to vote on that you need the third person for.
Well, I think
we
we need to talk about, Jim, go back to Jim's concern on looking at, the budgets. And I am going to try and pull up Tim's budget. I think you all saw the budget that I sent out the end of July too. So, I let you talk while I pull it up.
We may also want to talk about the Portal Lance proposal.
Okay, do you want to do that first? Because we'll have
Yeah,
to do a vote on that.
Yes,
Sorry, Jim, we will get back to you.
I have the letter here, but it says, we request the committee approval to have a concrete apron poured at our expense in the place of the bituminous apron, which is behind the sidewalk and to their property line where that fence is. The work would be done by High Rise Concrete Company of Bristol. The apron would be 5 inches thick and be pinned to the existing walk and reinforced with wire mesh. The contractor will be pouring the sidewalk at Miami Beach in the next several weeks, and we'll do our job at that time. He indicated that he would get it done for substantially less than the price that we offered him. I don't know, Kurt, if you ever heard of High Rise Concrete in Bristol, same town as Liverio, but
I have not.
okay. So I think the cost would be roughly half of what was proposed by Liverio. So obviously they're very interested in that, and I guess we could get information on the company to corroborate. And perhaps they could work from a print that you make for the contractor and make, Liverio, whether they would supervise it or whatever, but it's one more suggestion that they're trying to economize on.
So Tim, just for my edification, exactly, what is the town procedure for this sort of thing? Or Tim or Kurt, do you know what the typical procedure is, or?
Yeah, typically if you've got a non-town entity, let's say it on Hartford Avenue, the town can do through its public works department anything within the public right of way. It owns the right of way. It's sort of like work on your own property. when a non-town, or I'll say a non-municipal entity wants to work on town property, and it's sort of the same thing with state property, they have to obtain a permit. If you recall, Martin Laviero had to get the encroachment permit, to work on Shore Road, kind of a similar process. And that's because the municipality wants to know whatever improvements are being placed on their property are being placed in accordance with whatever applicable standards, whether it's a even curbing or anything like that. They want to know what's being done on their property. And then typically there is a bond required in case the entity fails to complete the work. The town is able to then go in and use the bond. And then there's insurance requirements because a third party is working on town property, and usually the town wants to be named as an additional insured. So example, if let's say in this work, somebody's walking down the town sidewalk, and one of the contractors leaves a shovel laying across the sidewalk, and somebody trips and falls, the town of Old Lyme is going to get sued. But you, as the town, want to be in a position to say, well, wait a second, we weren't doing that work. It was this other party, and that's where being named as an additional insured in their policy protects the town. And that's pretty typical. I know your driveway ordinance does require a permit, because we had looked at that under some of the previous, that's why I remember it under some of the previous discussions. I don't know what the details of that entail, but you do have a permit process in place in town.
It might even be through Public Works. I'm not even-
Could be, yep. And because this is part of the driveway, your town driveway ordinance applies to this. Even though it's a piece of the driveway, it's still part of the driveway.
I don't have a problem with them hiring their own contractor, but I agree with Mary Jo. I think they should just go through the procedures. If they were putting in an apron, maybe we could help them along and, make it move it a little quicker, because this is, caused by us. But I think, I don't have a problem with that, hiring their own contractor and just going through the, proper procedure for putting in an apron on town property. I presume, I'll speculate that the reason the cost is less is because no prevailing wage is involved here.
Kurt, would you have a schematic of the apron that we could make sure they understand what the standard is?
What I could do is, because the plans for the project are part of the public record, I'm happy to just send someone the PDF plan set that has all those details in it.
And are those details for a concrete apron or for a bitumen? And does it matter?
Oh, that's a good point, Bonnie. Let me check on that. That's actually a very good point.
Yes, I guess my
Let me check.
question is, by allowing them to do this, are we now adding cost to our end in order to make sure that they do it right? So,
Good
It
good
just-
question.
I mean, if we have to have Kurt do work that we're paying him to do, and Martin Lavere to oversee something, now we're putting our, costs up there, and is it just complicating things? If that weren't the case, that I wouldn't object either. I'm sure that they most likely could do a good job, but we have to make sure it's done right.
Maybe
So-
Arrow could give us a credit for the not having to do the bituminous.
Well,
Might-
the
That's
the
a
thing
good
that,
point, yeah.
the thing that I saw, Ed, I asked him about it. He recommends also that we put in an expansion piece or joint between the back of sidewalk and the concrete apron, also that whatever we do is covered in case, and this is, I think, to Kurt's point too, in case this group damages the new sidewalk, that they have to repair it,
Well, that would be part of the bond.
right?
Yeah, and do they know that they have to put up a bond in order to do it? Is that included in the price that they gave, or are they gonna now come back and say, oh, well, if we have to do that, the price changes?
Well, that would
I
be
suspect it
between-
will.
And,
I'd be-
and who would do that? Does the vendor put up the bond? I suppose that's what, I think that's
Yeah.
what was
Sure.
yeah. But what does the homeowner have to assure? Anything? Do they have to go through the permit process, or does the vendor go through the permit process?
It could be either or.
Probably either the owner or
Okay,
the contractor would get the permit.
so is this going to require any legal involvement for our attorneys then, Tim?
I can't imagine.
I don't think so. I think, the permit process should cover us, but
Okay,
again, is it just adding cost for them to save some of the money? Is it adding hoops that we have to go through and cost, and is it really gonna be that cost in the end for the homeowner?
I'm sorry, my apologies. I have to leave. I've got to be somewhere at 6 o'clock, so
okay,
I'll see y'all later. Good luck.
Okay.
Hopefully we'll have some numbers in the next week or so, Kurt, that we can have a good meeting on. And
Yeah, that's going to be a top priority.
and I know
that
that
data.
Teddy is going to be on my case again, asking when his problem's going to get fixed. So as soon as we can get an email out to that effect, it will be helpful.
Yep, that'll happen without delay.
Sorry, everybody, but I have to leave. Thank you.
thank you, Frank. Okay, so I guess to answer your question, Tim, we really don't have anything to vote on until we're sure that this company and the Port Lances are aware that there
I
is
guess
a
the
town
consensus
process.
is that if we get the permit, the insurance, the bond, and the PDF thing, which would be the roadmap how to do it, then I could say if those requirements can be met, then we're in business. Now, let's see, is there any example of a concrete apron up the street or anywhere?
I just looked through the town standard details, and the town doesn't have a standard concrete apron. So in that case, I'll review our bid documents. I actually don't think we have a concrete apron on this project. So in that case, I would recommend default to DOT's concrete apron detail, which again is part of the public record.
Because it's
So where's the
essentially I don't know, 18 inches or whatever it is. I don't know. It goes to the boundary line, then I guess if they want to continue something behind on their property, that would be their prerogative, right?
Correct. And
So
once
it's a-
you got to
Isn't there
that point, they could construct that portion in any manner that they choose.
Yeah.
I think Jim
Didn't
was trying to
Lavero
get
do,
in. There you go. Jim,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
didn't Lavero do, didn't he do a concrete apron 2 doors down from the Easy Mart? One of those driveways was put in as concrete.
Yeah, yes, we became aware that that was not part of our project.
Did Lavero do the work? Because it went in at the same time as the sidewalk.
Yes, it turns out his team, some of his team did the work for the homeowners.
Mm-hmm. Well, he would have standards, I'm assuming, that he did that too.
Hmm.
Say that was on Shore Road or Hartford Avenue?
No, it was on Hartford,
Hartford,
south of the Easy Mart. There's definitely a concrete apron down there. In fact,
Yeah.
an entire concrete, I believe.
Yep.
Did
Yes,
they get a permit?
that's a good question, Bonnie.
All right, well, I'll get back to Portland's and say, subject to those essentially 4 elements, we'll keep talking and firm it up, hopefully.
Sorry, I had to walk away. Okay.
Joe, I just said that I'll get back to Portland saying with the 4 elements we discussed were receptive to his proposal, but we have to do some work.
That seems reasonable. Yeah, and again, what Ed would like them to do is add that expansion joint. So I'm sure he'll have something. It's better to tell him up front.
Would there be an expansion between the back of sidewalk and the boundary line, Kurt?
The joint would be at the back of sidewalk and their new work, so that would be a construction joint with a bond breaker, put in there. At the back of their little segment where the stone abuts their new segment, because it's concrete, the concrete would just drop off and the stone would just abut it. If that answers your question.
Yeah, once they get to the property line, they could continue, I guess, with it.
Oh, theoretically they could, yes. Yep. Yeah.
You
yeah.
wouldn't require a second joint at the property line, would you?
I mean, not necessarily. I suspect that they're gonna end this at the property line and then just have their stone abut it. But theoretically, if they wanted to continue it in, they could.
Okay.
Okay. I am going to try and share Tim's budget here. Where it is. Oh, that's not-
Hey, Mary Jo, can I ask Kurt one more question about
Please
the
do.
Portland's
I'm
apron?
still, yes.
Kurt, are we getting a final inspection from DOT on Hartford Avenue, the way we had an inspection on Shore?
No, I don't believe that's part of the project. The final inspection would be done by me, as part of our closeout.
So if this apron doesn't get done, it's not really going to materially affect our final approvals. Is that correct?
Yeah, not necessarily. Right. Yep.
Okay.
To Jim's question on that, when you say not get, that the apron doesn't get done because are you saying that it's a possibility, Jim, that they might just leave it, the rocks where they are?
Yeah, if
Okay,
something
yes.
falls through, or whether the contractor gets backed up, or if they back
Mhm.
out, I'm just wondering if we say, okay, we're not going to do the bituminous because Port Alliance is going to go in and do a concrete apron,
Mhm.
and then for whatever reason, here we are next summer and it still hasn't been done.
Mhm.
Is that going to hold up any approval for us?
My recommendation to avoid that would be to have some sort of a date, a milestone, that something along the lines of, we know that Martin Laviero will be mobilizing back down there, let's say in early October. The P&Z meeting is October 12th, so let's say it's sometime a few days after the 12th. At such time, if the concrete apron was not installed, my suggestion would be that to protect the town's interest, that at that time, the contractor go ahead and install the bituminous apron. So you don't have a situation where Martin Leviero finishes their work, demobilizes, and then you still have nothing resolved and stone up to the sidewalk.
Right. So that's we'll have to channel that to Portland saying the clock's going to be ticking if you want to go down this road, I'm guessing.
Yeah, well, I would expect he would get going right after Labor Day. I don't know why we'd have to wait till October, but we would lose 3 weeks if we don't get. Isn't he going to work on Hartford Avenue during September for the stuff that needs to be done, or is it going to be wait in October?
That all would happen in October after the second P&Z approval of the transit hub.
Hmm.
Good question, Jim.
I've got to get going in about 10 minutes myself now. So
Okay, here's your budget, Tim.
can you make it a little bigger? It's microfiche.
Well, I can't get the whole thing on. I can certainly make
maybe-
it bigger.
Yeah, there
I
you
can
go.
do that.
Kurt, I was hoping to talk with you, but under let's see, count the lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The sixth line, I think it's the 31st of May, BSC Group, $15,000 grant ineligible. I think by reading, I got to move those numbers to the right, the column to the right, which is the grant ineligible column. And there is another one down like July 1st, grant ineligible, the 5864 would be moved over. And I think all the $6,500 for the transit hub is grant ineligible, isn't it?
That's correct. Yeah, there's three budgets that we're working against, or BSC is working against. The first one is construction inspection, which is 100% grant eligible. That budget is $19,000. We've spent $14,306 to date. The second is design services during construction, and that is grant ineligible. So that is paid for by the town, and that budget is $17,500, of which $14,753 has been spent. And then the third is the transit hub, and that is transit hub design services with a budget of $6,500, of which $5,351 has been spent, and that is grant ineligible. That is design services, so that is town money.
Right. Okay, so I will need to move those items from the eligible column to the ineligible. I think at the bottom of the first page, this is a different spreadsheet now.
I was just showing the spreadsheet that I shared with the group and yourself at the end of July. I'll put yours back up, hopefully. Yep.
So, and I guess we switched change order numbers on the 1, 2, 3 stuff, but that's easy. So what we spent is a total of $224,866 through the town here, and then what we believe will be coming along is the 129,000 or 542 plus another 7103 ineligible, so that's 136. And if we are aware, like I know you must have had another invoice on the transit hub, because I only had 2143 spent, but you got 5,300, so I guess there's another bill in there.
Yeah, that's probably is being generated now. You probably haven't received it yet,
Yeah,
because that was as of Friday. All those numbers were as of Friday, the 6th.
so assuming we don't have any surprises in what we're doing, you know, contingency wise and so forth. If the project is committed at 361,005, then obviously we have additional room for beyond the transit hub for some additional things. Subject to, you know, firming up some of these unknowns at this point. But I thought this rendition would at least provide us with a breakdown between what's eligible, what's not ineligible, what's not eligible. So I think there's one other transit hub thing. Yeah, that's okay. So I think subject to those movement of those three items, it'll change the math into two columns, but the end result should be the same. Just to be clear on the 4,000 and the 2,500 for the base project, I guess that takes us through the end of the loose ends that Lavera would handle in the fall. So it goes to July 16th, but then it also takes us into the fall. So the total sidewalk engineering should be within those two numbers in the aggregate, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're correct. Those did bring us through the end of July because we were under the impression that everything would be wrapped up by the end of July. I feel that with the inspection number, so this is the grant eligible number, we should be able to come in within that money, especially if he does do everything at once in the fall. I think that is sufficient money to do that. And then depending on, really, there shouldn't be much of anything left for design services during construction. For example, like this meeting, that money is where I'm charging these hours. We're pretty tight on that. You know, I'll do everything I can to finish things up within that budget.
Okay,
If for
now,
some reason we did need more, it believe me, it wouldn't be much. It would be a very small amount of money.
okay, the 6,500 was, you know, for the transit hub, but I sent you the email about the past 5 and 6, which have to do with observation and sort of supervision. Will we need additional money beyond the 6,500 for the $42,000 hub project? Because task 5 and 6 seem to have the flavor of inspection type stuff.
So for the transit hub, similar to the base project, you will have design services during construction, which are submittal reviews and other things that are not grant eligible. So those costs would be borne by the town. The value of that is to be determined based on the final plan that we end up with. But by nature of what we're talking about, I don't anticipate it's going to be that much. And then you'll have construction inspection for the transit hub, which is again a grant eligible cost. Clearly that won't be as much as the base project because it's just a smaller effort, but there'll be some monies there. And that's again for the site visits and coordinating the testing and the final inspections. Again, that's to be determined depending on the scale
but
of the cost.
when we read task number 5, it says consultation during construction, including design related and administrative. That sounds like what you're talking about. What's different about 5 and 6 that are not done with the other, or vice versa?
I guess I'm not, when you say task 5 and 6, I'm not sure where you're reading
Well,
that
it's
from.
five in your $6,500 proposal, or what we signed up.
Oh, yeah, let me just open that up then.
It says consultation during construction, including design-related and administrative services associated with the construction transit hub. So that reads to me like that's work during construction. So I'm puzzled about yet, like with the other project where we had these other numbers. And 6 is construction observation services, on-site periodic documentation of construction in progress. So, and then the last sentence says the fees associated with these services are not included in this proposal. But if it's a task 5 and 6, it sounds like it is part of the proposal. And unfortunately, I got to get at a Board of Finance meeting in 5 minutes, so I got to go down the hall. But maybe we can
Okay,
talk.
I'm looking at it now. Yep, that's correct. So in the April 27th proposal, those services are listed, and then those are defined as they are not included in the $6,500. You're correct.
Well, it seems like it's contradictory. If it's a task within the thing and it's not included, I mean, you're saying it's not part of the $6,500, right?
Correct.
Is
Kurt,
there task 5 and 6 then?
Kurt, is one of the reasons that's a little bit maybe confusing is because we didn't have a go, no go at that time in April. Also, you had the cost of the survey in there too, correct?
Yeah, the reason I included it is it was important to make sure that the town knew that those services would be required. Because again, this work is part of the DOT Community Connectivity Grant Program, so you have to have those services included. So
Well,
if I didn't let you know that they had to be included, I didn't want to be remiss, and then, so I
They
want to
might
be very
be-
open.
They might be put under 2.0 additional services. I mean, it's implies that it's part of one of the tasks of the $6,500. And so can you get us numbers, projections? Because it's going to be a material thing. And
Well, I do indicate them under additional services also, item number 12, 13, construction phase services and resident engineer or
Yeah.
clerk of the work services are excluded.
Well, and if they're listed as tasks, I think it does seem as if it's part of the base 6,500, but I know what you're saying.
Yeah,
But
and
I
that's
think-
why, if you notice, I also included the sentence at the end, the fees associated with these services are not included in this proposal, as these fees are eligible under the CCGP. So I'm sorry if it wasn't more clear. I thought it was clear, but
We probably need to get on this list any cost for survey and these other on-site things, so we know what we're talking about. So could you make a good effort to estimate what those could be?
I think once at this time, I can't. I think once we know the scope of the project based on the pricing that we get from Martin Laviero, then we'll be able to understand what what our services would be during construction. But right now, I mean, I could pull numbers together, but they really wouldn't be based on anything, because until we get those numbers from Dan, we don't know what we can afford.
Okay, well, we'll carry on later. Sorry to have to go.
Yeah, I am too, Tim. Okay. Thank you, Kurt, for answering some of Tim's questions, or trying to. I think it's understanding what's eligible and ineligible, and that's what our whole issue has been since last fall. our construction grant is for construction. And from the very start of this project, we agreed that we would construct as much as we can with the 400,000. What Tim's budget proposes is to reduce what we can do with construction, and includes the municipal costs, the ineligible costs in his map. The result being we short ourselves on construction. I tried to discuss this with Tim earlier today, and we've had some discussions in our past meetings, that we had asked for appropriation to cover the ineligible costs. It's unfortunate we didn't budget accordingly at the beginning, but as I told him, committees aren't given a budget in Old Lyme. So he and I were using as an example the advertising costs for the day advertising. He did not include that as something the town should pick up in the selectmen's budget, but he did pick up 3,000 and change in legal budgets. So I'm confused on that. And bottom line is, if this is the approach, we are shorting ourselves on construction. It's not what we agreed to with the DOT. And it really would then require every single committee to have a budget for these items, or estimate and know what their estimates were up front. And that's just not how we've done things historically with a committee. So
one thing that does confuse me, as you know, Mary Jo, I've been keeping a spreadsheet of sort of running for the purposes of, as your designer, understanding how much money you'd have available for the transit hub, you know,
Right.
so I could have something to base on.
mhm,
I do notice a couple of things. In number one, the numbers that I have for what you have available for your transit hub do differ from what are on Tim's spreadsheet. I have that you have $108,000 available for the transit hub.
yeah, that's what the budget we had the end of July had 109,600.
Okay, so we're pretty
Yeah.
close. I also do notice that in Tim's spreadsheet, he has two columns, which makes sense. One is grant eligible, one is grant ineligible.
Mhm.
But I noticed that there are costs labeled as grant ineligible that are listed in the grant eligible column. So in a way, it's some of
Yes.
these numbers need to be moved around. I notice at the bottom of the spreadsheet, the transit hub costs from Lavero are listed in the grant ineligible column. So I think this spreadsheet sort of needs to have all these numbers reallocated. Otherwise, you're not going to really know what you have. It seems to be kind of flip-flopping back and forth.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, it seems that he's just trying to keep everything under the 400,000 plus a few extras, original town approved budget. And
Right.
we haven't, that's not the way that we were approaching it from the beginning. 400,000 was supposed to go for construction, and everything else has to go through the approval process with the town. And
That's correct.
I say we just keep moving forward with the figures based on what we know we've got for construction. And when we get to that 400,000 threshold, we just have to plan on going to the Board of Finance and saying, you got to allocate more money. And when we get to that point, we have to have a good idea as to what we're going to need. So, because we'll only be able to do it once.
Right. I totally agree with you. I think that makes perfect sense. I can't force ourselves onto the Board of Finance agenda.
I know.
So,
But we're gonna have to force ourselves onto it. Whether it's on the agenda or not, we're gonna have to get to a meeting. You know, but we have to know all the figures to the best of our ability. And to Kurt's point, until we see the plan, he can't really tell us what the cost will be for the added services,
mhm.
you know?
Yep. And the other thing I just object to, and I did share this with Tim today, is that I feel very passionate that this committee has not seen these legal bills. I don't know what's in those. I mean, I have no idea. The last time Tim shared some legal bills with the committee, we were around 3,000 and something. And then he said the selectmen's budget would pay for that, fine. And then in this budget, he's got about 8,000 more in legal bills. So that's a concern.
Sure.
I
I would agree.
couldn't stand before the Board of Finance and say I knew what these were for. Just couldn't. Okay, so I agree with Bonnie. How do you feel, Jim?
Well, I was just looking for some clarification, I guess, and
Yeah.
Bonnie or Mary Jo probably provided for me. Tim's budget, and judging from his email, my guess is that the way he's approaching it is we have a $400,000 grant. That's going to be the ceiling of what the town intends to spend on this. He clearly said he doesn't want to go ask for more money at the Board of Finance. So in that case, using this budget, you know, there's the ineligible cost of 14,000, but as we know, it's going to be quite a bit more because a lot of these numbers have to move into the ineligible column. So at the end of the day, we could hit with eligible and ineligible costs the 400,000 mark. And I think, you know, it's too bad he's not here to confirm it. I think that's the way Tim is approaching this, that the combined ineligible and eligible costs, once they hit 400,000, we're through. If that's the case, in the end, that grant will be reduced because the state is going to come and say, well, we're not going to reimburse you for these particular costs. So we're not actually going to get 400,000 in the end. And when we get to that point, where does that additional ineligible money come from? Since we're not getting the revenue that we had set up in the budget, you know, our $400,000 budget is predicated on receiving 400,000 from the state. We'll actually be receiving less.
Well, in this case, we already have 400,000. It's not a reimbursement. They've already given us the revenue.
But they'll
given us
take
the
it back.
revenue.
They'll take
will-
it back
take it
if it's
back.
ineligible.
That's right. We will
Yeah.
be writing them a check.
That's correct.
Right. And what is that check charged to? Is that charged? Well, obviously the town pays it, but you know, what pot does that come from? Who approves that? You know, is that charged against this project? And will it come across as a project overrun? Because at that point, I just don't really understand the back end of this very
Yeah.
clearly.
Now,
When
what happens is that our revenue will be reduced, but we've
Right.
approved spending of 400,000, so we're okay. And
Right.
the revenue is reduced, and that happens a lot in our budget. You know, we
Mhm.
plug numbers in there.
Mhm.
We don't have control over the revenue all the time. We put estimates
Right.
in there. We do have control over the spending, and we can't exceed our spending without going to the Board of Finance for more money.
Mhm.
So, you know, to me, it's a sneaky way of not spending and reducing that grant. It just doesn't make sense though, because the money is not paid by the taxpayers. It's a hard thing for them to understand that we're not just spending more money. We're losing money from the state to do things that we should be doing. This is what small towns should be doing, is getting grants to get things done that we want to do without taxing the residents. But some of the money should be paid by taxpayers, you know, and that's the ineligible costs. And it's not that much. It's just not that much. If I said to people, you know, if we spend $40,000 or $50,000 of your taxpayer money in order to get $400,000 of work done, I think any taxpayer would probably agree with it.
That's exactly what I told Tim today in our meeting, that I think we have a perfectly understandable, reasonable story, and that
Right.
it's been done in the past. Not only are we getting 400,000 for our, say, I mean, just say it's 100,000, we're getting 400,000. We have the unknown cost, but of all the benefit we're getting for tourism and support for the businesses, that,
Right.
you know, that's why Teddy is a supporter, because he knows this project helps his business.
Right.
So to pay for a advertising that's required, not by the municipal processes as well as the state processes, putting that on the project on a committee that is never given a budget makes no sense. It should be paid for out of the selectmen's budget, which is paid for by the taxpayer.
Right. And
The
it
other
has
thing-
been in the past.
Exactly. And the other thing I shared was that, you know, the ineligible costs, like Bonnie said, are not that much. The majority of them are BSC's costs. And this is because the town does not employ staff to do those things. We don't
Right.
have, and that would be a much larger cost to the town.
Sure.
So
Good point.
So that's where we're at. I appreciate everybody's thoughts on this. Guess
Well, I think we just have to put pressure on to make people understand and the Board of Finance understand that we really should be utilizing the $400,000 that we're getting for this from the state for any work that we can get done. Any construction work we can get done.
Right. And I know Frank left the meeting, but he and I spoke today, based on the conversation I had with Tim earlier. The fact that we would be asking for example, if we were not going to do the transit hub, to have it done some other way, as long as we got to the end point, means that those costs to get that endpoint done would be on the taxpayer. We would be paying somebody to do that
Right.
work. So we would be going back to the taxpayer for costs
Right.
associated with that. So it's a circular argument in many respects, and I think history has shown we wouldn't go back and do it. It wouldn't get done.
Right.
Okay. All right. To be continued. Thank you very much, Kurt, for your help on this.
My pleasure.
I will just like to add, from my perspective, that you have done a lot with a limited budget, and it's greatly appreciated.
Yes,
Yeah.
it
My
is.
pleasure.
The other part, Tim isn't here, is to discuss, and Frank, is this morning, I happened to be in town hall and I went in to see Dan Beret, our zoning enforcement officer, and he and I called Kurt. Thank you, Kurt, for taking our impromptu call about the processes to get in the public hearing for zoning and to get our referral from planning for the transit hub. Unlike some projects going on in town, this project, we are following our ordinances and regulations. And we have to submit application to get accepted by the zoning commission at their September meeting to be heard in October. We hope to get on to the September meeting of planning for their referral. Now, there are fees involved with the advertising, for example, on all of this. But we have to have a public hearing for zoning. So that has to be published. And according to Dan, it's about 400 and some change. That's a municipal cost, but I just wanted to share that with the committee. I'm hoping that Tim will approve that. The other part of this conversation that was confusing and surprising to me, and maybe Kurt, you could help me with this. The coastal review process, the project has to go through coastal review at the deep, and I was surprised by that.
Wow.
Yeah. Do you remember?
So, yep, so
Get out of this.
because the project is in the coastal area, coastal review area, the town's regulations require that and I have the form right here. Bear with me, I'll just open it up so I can make sure I get the correct name of it. In addition to the special permit application, we have to fill out an application form, municipal coastal site plan review for projects located fully or partially within the coastal boundary. So that's in your zoning regulations. These stem from state regulations, but they are enforced at the local level, similar to codes and standards. They are promulgated by the state, but they're enforced by the building official at the local level. This is kind of similar. I think in this case, this form gets sent up to deep. In this case, because we are, yes, we're technically in the coastal boundary. However, we are not proximal to any coastal resources. We really have zero coastal impacts. I think it will be a very simple review once the person at deep lays eyes on it. I don't think it will delay us in any way, shape, or form. We can get this in prior to the September 13th meeting, and then hopefully we'll have an answer back, or basically a finding of, no impact by the time we hit the October 12th meeting, where we get our formal approval.
Okay. Thank you. That one really surprised me.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's a one size fits all. In other words, if you're in the boundary, you're in it. That's it. Whether your project is small like ours or big like something, if you're on the map in the boundary, you got to fill out the form and send it in. But I'm very confident because our project is so minor. We're not near any wetlands, water bodies. We're on the other side of the road. We're not going to have any issues based on my experience with this form and that process.
Thank you. I guess that really falls under the next thing on our agenda, outstanding concerns. That was an outstanding concern for me today that I wanted to bring up to you. And thank you, Kurt, for making me feel like it's going to be okay.
It will. Yeah, I'm not worried about it at all.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to let everybody know is I got a note, this is under outstanding concerns, from our homeowners on 272 and 274 Shore. They have complained that they need their water meter access raised. There's apparently 2 points on each property, so a total of 4 that need to be raised. I didn't get a chance to go and verify that today. But I know that is an item on basically the punch list we have given Dan. So if we could add those 2 properties and the 4 water meter access points to the list.
Yep, and just to confirm, Mary Jo, 272 and 274.
Correct.
Okay, I will add that on.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have any invoices to approve that you know of, Kurt?
No, but I believe that there are 2 invoices. Oh, yeah, I think there's 3 invoices pending. 1 invoice, and they're actually really, really small.
Okay.
1 invoice for construction inspection,
Mhm.
1 invoice for the design services during construction, and then 1 invoice for the transit hub. And I believe that invoice, because we haven't actually done much on the transit hub, that represents the survey that we have that has been completed. The survey's done.
Thank you for mentioning that. Okay, nobody in town hall has made me aware that we have anything yet, so that's why I was verifying with you.
Yeah, they may not even have been sent out yet.
Okay, okay. And so the committee knows this survey is required by our town processes to have an A2, everything up to A2 standard. So nobody in town hall had a survey of that property, so we were required to do that.
And I will actually send that to the committee just as part of the record, part of a deliverable.
That's a
Um,
great
and then-
idea.
Yep, and then happy to, if you want, or you can pass on, happy to provide it to the town, so then you guys have it in your town files. Obviously, this is a great piece of data beyond the transit hub for a town asset, so now you know exactly what you have, and we have all the property bounds and the marks and everything on there, so.
That'd be
um,
great.
Yeah, it's a valuable piece of data for the town.
Thank you. I guess when you get an idea of the timelines for the meetings for planning and zoning, the chronology and such, if we could maybe have a list of that, then I can share that for the committee to join us if they're available for the meetings.
Yeah, it looks like the September meeting is on September 13th. And I believe that's a Monday. And then it looks like the October meeting, which would be meeting number 2, where they actually act on the application, is October 12th. And I believe that's a Tuesday.
Okay.
But we'll confirm.
Okay.
But I looked at the website and I was a little thrown because the Monday, but there could have been something going on that week, so the meeting kind of got. But the 13th.
Well, generally they meet on Mondays, but if
Oh.
there's a holiday on Monday, they meet on Tuesday.
Okay, so maybe that's the October one. For some reason, it got pushed a day. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Columbus Day.
Aha. Okay. Yep. And then what we have to do is for the September 13th meeting, where they accept the application, we need to
Mhm.
have everything into them a couple weeks in advance. And we are, provided that I kind of received what I was hoping tonight to receive, either a go or a no-go. I think we know we need to get the costs from Dan, but the good news is we know that we have at least the base project covered. Again, my data tells me that you have 108. I think your number was 109. Let's make it easy, $100,000.
Mhm.
We know with Dan's cost of 41,000, we know that we at least have the base project. So that's really good news. If the committee wanted to, and it doesn't, we have plenty of time. I'm not sure when we're going to meet again. We could start getting some of these things done. The application form, the coastal site form. We don't need to wait for the plans for that. The one
Yeah.
concern that I have, and I've mentioned it in past meetings, and it was something that I was hoping we could bring up tonight. As I had mentioned, that at this point, we had a budget of 6,500 for the transit hub. We've spent 5,351. So we basically have $1,148 left. I don't think I can get everything done with that amount of money. So we need a little bit more money in that budget, not a lot, but full disclosure, as I had mentioned previously, the survey cost more than I had planned on. So and if the committee wants, I can write a supplemental proposal. I'll put together a spreadsheet to kind of understand exactly how much more money I think I need. It's not going to be much. And obviously I'll try, it's all time and materials, by the way, also. So we are only charging for exactly what is spent. Any quote unquote leftover monies don't get charged. So it's very open book. But full disclosure, I wanted to make sure the committee was aware that with the
I think it-
148.
I think getting that from you would be helpful to us. And
Okay,
if we
I can
have
put
to,
that
we
together.
can have a special meeting. I think the sooner the better, so we can keep moving forward on this. I don't want to miss those September and October dates.
Right, okay. I'll have that to you by the end of the week.
Thank you. Trying to get us back to.
And I'll send that survey out first thing in the morning.
Okay, thank you. Trying to get us back to live action here. Having a hard time. Sorry about that. Okay. I think just in summary, the committee has committed to the basic transit hub. So, I mean, I think that was pretty clear. And as far as next meetings, so as soon as we get all that, we'll set up another meeting with everybody. And are there any other comments before I go on to approval of minutes and adjournment?
I just wanted to clarify one thing on the Lavero budget. The inspection testing line for 15,700. Does that pertain specifically to the concrete transit hub? To the concrete work that they're going to do, like that 42,000?
You're talking about the incidentals that we carried over from on top, if you will, brought it down.
No, I'm talking about the transit hub costs, the Lavero soft numbers that he gave us, the estimates.
Oh.
So we have the 42,000 for the concrete work, basically, for the pad and the sidewalks leading up to the pad. And then we have the landscaping, the amenities, and that's pretty clear what that entails. Then we have inspections. And I'm wondering if that is tied into the concrete work. Is that what that pertains to?
Oh, I see that number.
Yeah, so if we do the 42,000.
You're on Tim's spreadsheet, right, Jim?
Yeah, and I think that's based on, yeah, that's what Lavero pretty much threw at us, right? Like as a rough estimate.
I'll be honest with you, I don't know where that number of 15,700 comes from.
Okay. I was wondering if we was, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I believe that really, I don't know what Tim was thinking on that spreadsheet for that, but in the previous iteration of our budget, we had 15,700 as part of the carryover from the first phase of the budget, if you will, the leftover incidentals. It's probably less than that now, but at the time that budget was put together, the end of July, we had about 15,700 left that we carried down to use in the transit hub.
Okay.
And for inspections and testing. I think we just,
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Right.
so,
So, yep,
yeah.
you're exactly right, Mary Jo. Yep, yep. And Jim, to clear, the background on that is, if you recall, you are allowed to carry 10% of construction for those incidentals. So that was 26,100 that was kind of originally set aside to cover that. At this
Right.
point, BSC's fees are 19,000. So you still have 7,100 left sort of in that pot of money. That helps contribute because it's not going to get used. So that helps contribute
Right.
to that 15,700. So that's an example of where that 15,700, if I'm not mistaken, is a combination of eligible and ineligible costs. So that really should be broken up potentially separately on that spreadsheet, I think.
Yeah.
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 If
Right.
on
Yeah, 'cause that's-
ours, we just kind of kept it, if you can see what I'm sharing, we just
Yeah.
said,
Yeah.
expect inspections, because we really don't know how much that will be.
Right. Okay. And my final question is, in terms of maintenance, I noticed today they cut the grass, and
Yeah.
I don't know who cut the grass.
Public Works.
But okay, are they going to be maintaining the grass from now on? If they accepted that as part of their portfolio down there?
I can tell you that last month, when the grass was not getting cut, all I did was call Ed, and he said, oh, they planned on getting it done. The mower had been out of service, but they planned on getting it done, and they've come back twice since. So my feeling is
Okay.
they understand that we need to, as much as that's not a lovely thing for them to do, that they're doing it and they're doing it regularly, and they get it.
Okay. Thank you.
The other thing on that is, I don't know if you've seen it, Kurt, Ed, our Public Works Director, moved the police sign somewhat from the ramp that has to be modified per the DOT audit. My understanding was that the sign was going to be moved north of where it ended up. So if you are down there at some point, if you could take a look to make sure it's moved in the right spot, that would be great.
Okay, absolutely.
Thanks. Okay. But they also put new posts in. They did a nice job. Okay. Anything else? I noticed some typos on my spreadsheet, which I will fix, like how to spell ineligible. So I'll send out a revised one when it's updated with the current invoices we've approved. Can I have a motion to approve our minutes from July 8th?
I'm happy to move that, but I wasn't at the meeting.
Right.
So I'll abstain, unless you
Right.
want to wait until the next meeting to approve.
I think we'll have to, because it's just Jim and I then, right?
Right.
Okay, we will. Thank you. Then I guess the last thing is motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Bonnie. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Thank you
Thank-
all.
Kurt.
Thank
Have a
you.
Thank
great
you, Mary
night.
Jo. You
Thank
too.
you,
Bye.
guys. You too. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.